Okay, after following the discussion of ascending, descending pathway, finally we are into brainstem. So, in this brainstem, okay, while discussing about ascending pathway, descending pathway, we said that these these sensation impulses, right? They travel through what? They travel through brainstem. So now we need to know in detail about what brainstem. So now without delay, let's move directly into brainstem. Now what are the things that we are going to discuss in our brainstem? The thing that we are going to discuss in our brainstem is we are going to discuss about the ventral aspect of brainstem, right? We are going to study about the dorsal aspect of brainstem. We are going to study about various cranial nerve, how they are originating from our brainstem, and also we'll be learning a brief about the fourth ventricles. Now without delay, let's move into our discussion. Now here, okay, the first thing that I would like to add up right here is now talking about cranial nerves. Now the cranial nerves, the first and second cranial nerve, there are altogether 12 pair of cranial nerve, right? 12 pair of cranial nerve. Now out of this 12 pair of cranial nerve, right, 12 pair of cranial nerve, the first and second, they come from forebrain, and remaining everything from 3 to 12, they have origination from our brainstem. Now in this brainstem, what we have three components. What is this? Our midbrain, our pons, right, and our medulla oblongata. Now talking about from midbrain our third and fourth cranial nerve arises, and similarly from pons solely our fifth cranial nerve arises, and from medulla oblongata, right, from medulla oblongata what we have is 9 to 11 cranial nerve arising, and in between our this ponto medullary junction there happens the origination of 6, 7, 8 cranial nerve, and 12 also it arises from medulla oblongata. Okay, now how they originate, right, and what are the things that we need to know? We'll be discussing all these things right here in this diagram, so need not to worry. Okay, now beginning our discussion. Okay, now let's begin from ventral aspect of our brainstem. I've already mentioned the brainstem, it consists of how many parts? 3 parts. Now initially, what is this? Okay, the thing that I'm drawing and that I'm highlighting right here, what is this structure? This structure is our pons. What is this? This is our pons, and here you can see cerebral peduncle. What are these? These are cerebral peduncle. Now these cerebral peduncles are the part of what? Our midbrain, right, midbrain. And here below you can see this structure. What is this structure? This structure is all our medulla oblongata. Okay, now in brief we know about what? Midbrain, pons and medulla oblongata. Okay, now let's begin our discussion. Now let's talk initially about our these cerebral peduncle, which are the part of what? Our midbrain. Now these cerebral peduncle consist of what? In between them it consists of interpeduncular fossa. Now we need to know about boundary of interpeduncular fossa. We need to know about content of interpeduncular fossa. Before that I'd like to mention that the third and fourth cranial nerve, right, which were coming from midbrain, these are coming right like this, right, the third cranial nerve and fourth cranial nerve. This third cranial nerve, as you can see, this is the content of interpeduncular fossa. And talking about fourth cranial nerve, this fourth cranial nerve is only a cranial nerve that is coming from dorsal aspect. As you can see, what it is coming from dorsal aspect of brainstem, right, dorsal aspect of brainstem. We have discussed about this third and fourth cranial nerve courses in our cranial nerve lecture. So that's all. This was about what? This was our third and fourth cranial nerve. Now what about our fifth cranial nerve? Now talking about fifth cranial nerve, as I mentioned earlier, this fifth cranial nerve, it is solely, right, it is solely emerging from ventral aspect of what? Pons, ventral aspect of our pons, right, about fifth cranial nerve. Okay, now what about our sixth, right, seventh, eighth cranial nerve? Now this 6th, 7th, 8th cranial nerve, what is going on is they are originating from pontomedullary junction. What is this? This is our pontomedullary junction. The above one, it is our pons, and below it is our medulla oblongata. So they arise from pontomedullary junction. Now in detail we will be talking somehow later on. Now here moving further, we talked about our medulla oblongata, right? We talked about medulla oblongata, and we said that medulla oblongata, right, medulla oblongata, there are how many? 9, 10 and 11 cranial nerve, and also 12 cranial nerve that will come from medulla oblongata. Now how they come, let's see. Now talking about the parts of medulla oblongata, there are two parts of medulla oblongata. One is, you can see, what is this? This is olive, right? Olive part. And the one that is in green that you can see, what is this? This is pyramid, right? That means there are two structure in medulla oblongata, that is pyramid and olive. Now between these pyramid and olive, what is going on is there is arising our one cranial nerve, and that is our 12th cranial nerve, right? 12th cranial nerve. Okay, this is only the nerve. This is 12th cranial nerve is only the nerve that will arise between pyramid and our olive, right? This is our olive, right? This is our pyramid, and the cranial nerve that is originating between these two structure, this is our what? This is our 12th hypoglossal cranial nerve. Okay. Now if you'll see beyond this this olive, there are how many? There are 3 cranial nerve that are coming. That means lateral to olive. These 3 cranial nerve are emerging. What are these? 9th, 10th and 11th cranial nerve. That's all. Okay, now that's all. Now here when we talked about this 6th, 7th and 8th cranial nerve, 6th, 7th and 8th cranial nerve, what we said that they arise from our what? Pontomedullary junction. Now specifically, if you will see this 6th cranial nerve, it is arising from what? It is arising from this. What is this? This is our pyramid, right? Pyramid. It is arising from what? Pontopyramidal, pons and pyramidal junction, right? Pontopyramidal junction. And talking about this 7th cranial nerve, if you will see 7th cranial nerve, it is coming from what? Olivary junction. That means from ponto-olivary junction. That's all. Okay. Okay, now moving further, I think we are clear about what? These structures, I mean these diagrams. Okay, as I have already said, the 6th cranial nerve, it is arising from pontopyramidal junction, and 7th cranial nerve, it is arising from pontomedullary junction, and 8th, it is arising from pontomedullary junction. Why 8th? Because you can see pontomedullary junction, right? Below we have got what? Medulla oblongata, above we have got pons. So the 8th cranial nerve is pontomedullary junction. Okay, in fact all of these are pontomedullary junction, but we can say that there is no specific structure like pyramid and olive in the region of 8th cranial nerve. That's why. Okay, now here now discussing further, okay, we'll see these things again, in this this image also, and also right here in our image from Atlas also. So don't worry about this section. Now now moving further, the thing that I'd like to mention right here is in this olive, right? In this olive, okay, this olive is present laterally to our this pyramid, right? And it consists of what? Inferior olivary nucleus also, olivary nucleus also. That is one important fact, right? Okay, now as this pyramidal track, right? What this pyramid while we are talking about what? Well, we are talking about descending motor pathway. At that time we mentioned about pyramidal and extrapyramidal pathway also. Now because of the now as there is presence of this pyramid right here, so the name was what? The pyramidal track also. Now this pyramidal track through these pyramid will keep what, will keep descending downward. Okay, at that time we mentioned that out of 100% of fiber present in ventral part or in anterior corticospinal tract, right, out of 100 what corticospinal tract, how many, 85% they were what, they were decussiating, right, 85% were decussiating, but 15% they were not decussiating, and this 15% was called anterior corticospinal tract, and these 85 they were called what, they were called lateral corticospinal tract, right. And this was the thing that we discussed in what, that we discussed in our previous descending motor pathway. Now one important fact that I would like to add up here is most of the motor nerve, right, most of the motor nerve are seen close to midline, right, motor nerve, we know the motor nerve, I'm not talking about both, I'm not talking about sensory, but I'm talking about what, motor nerve. Most of the motor nerve are seen relatively close to midline. As you can see, our, what is this, this is our, okay, as you can see, our third, right, third cranial nerve, our what, fourth cranial nerve, right, our seventh cranial nerve, right, our what, 12th cranial nerve, these are what, these are close to what, midline. So they will be involved in syndrome of brainstem, in which there will be loss of midline, right. If there will be injury or lesion in midline, then the motor nerve that are present close to midline will be affected. Now the same thing, I would like to add up same thing right here in this diagram also, right, in this diagram. Okay, let's focus. Okay, we talked about what, we talked about okay, here, okay, this region, what is this region, this is our interpedunculaire fossa, talking about the content of interpedunculaire fossa right now. Let's say this is our infundibulum, we'll be talking this thing in detail afterward also. Infundibulum is right here, mammillary body, you can see the mammillary body right here, right, mammillary body. And we said that what, we talked about third cranial nerve, we can see third cranial nerve right here, right, it is the content of what, it is the content of interpedunculaire fossa. Fourth cranial nerve, we know that fourth cranial nerve, it is a only cranial nerve coming from dorsal aspect, right, dorsal aspect of our this cerebral peduncle. All these are what, these are our cerebral peduncle, as you can see, cerebral peduncle. Okay, now these two, third cranial nerve, we talked about third, we talked about fourth. Now moving further, this was what, this was the region of our midbrain, above one, right, and below we have got pons, you can see below we have got pons. Now from pons we said that what, the what, fifth cranial nerve, right, fifth cranial nerve is arising right here. Now fifth cranial nerve, if we recall the fact, the fifth cranial nerve is what, our mixed cranial nerve, and since the fifth cranial nerve is our mixed cranial nerve, it consists of both what, motor and sensory part, right. Now since it is predominantly sensory in nature, so the sensory root is a bit thicker, as you can see, comparative to our what, in comparison to our what, the motor root, so trigeminal nerve, right. Okay, now moving further, yes, we talked about this also, fifth cranial nerve. Now moving further, what was this was our, what was this was our medulla oblongata, right. Now this was pontomedullary junction. Now from pontomedullary junction we said that what, sixth cranial nerve, right, that we can say, we can also say pontopyramidal we can also say what, pontopyramidal nerve also, from pontopyramidal junction. And then what we said, what was this was from olive, what was this is facial nerve, right. And similarly the facial nerve is also the mixed nerve, so you can see two parts right here. Now what are the two parts? The facial nerve is what, predominantly motor, so you can see the red portion is a bit thicker, it is just opposite of our trigeminal nerve, about facial nerve. So the facial nerve, it is mixed nerve, and mixed nerve, it consists of what, it consists of motor and sensory part. The sensory part is thinner, as you can see, thinner in green, and the motor part, it is what, it is thicker. So it was coming from what, it was coming from our what, ponto-olivary junction. Now moving further, what we have is, we have what, the eighth cranial nerve, you can see eighth cranial nerve, it is solely what, our pontomedullary junction, right, pontomedullary junction. So sixth, seventh, right, and eighth, so these are what, these are from the junctions. Now moving further, again what we said that this was what, this was the pyramid of our what, medulla oblongata on both side, and lateral to pyramid, what we got olive, right, pyramid and olive. Now between this olive and this pyramid, there was what, there was one nerve that was coming, that was hypoglossal nerve, the two-wheel cranial nerve, right? And similarly, if you'll just follow this what division or follow this depression, then obviously there will be what, there will be the first our what, cranial nerves, C1 nerves also will start. First cranial nerve will also start from this region, from this depression. Now moving what, posterior to our olive, what we have got, what, 9, 10 and 11 knobs, right? 9, 10 and 11 knobs, glossopharyngeal nerve, right? 10th vagus nerve, and 11th what, our cranial accessory nerve also. Okay, as you can see, this was what, and then after medulla oblongata obviously we have got spinal cord. So I think we are clear about these things. Now the same thing is right here. Now here, right, same thing is right here again. Now here the thing that I would like to focus right here is this was what, this was our cerebral peduncle, right? Cerebral peduncle, and inside right here, this was the region of what, this was the region of interpeduncular fossa. I already shared that third cranial nerve, as you can see, this is the content of interpeduncular fossa, and fourth cranial nerve, as you will see that it is what, it is coming dorsal to it is coming dorsal to cerebral peduncles, right? Third and fourth. Now here talking about interpeduncular fossa, I already mentioned the content of interpeduncular fossa, right? You can see what is this, this is infundibulum, and here the medullary body, you can see the medullary bodies also. Now anteriorly, if you'll see, anteriorly what you'll see is that, what is this, anteriorly there is optic chiasma, and inside, this is optic chiasma, inside what you will see is, inside you will see optic tract also. This thing will be clear, don't worry, it was clear right here in this diagram also. In this diagram, as you can see, above to our this interpeduncular fossa, what we got optic chiasma here, and optic tract was just inside, right? And this was infundibulum, and medullary body was right here. So these were the content right, these were the content. We'll again just look this thing again. Now yes, we saw what was this, the nerve that is, this is what, this is our midbrain, this is our pons, this is our medulla oblongata, and from pons the same thing again, there is what, our this thick, you can see the thin portion is right here and thick portion is right here also. This is what, this is our fifth cranial nerve, trigeminal nerve is what, mixed in nature, it is what, sensory, predominantly sensory, so sensory is thick and then motor is thin. So that's all. Now this pontomedullary junction again, what is this, this is our sixth cranial nerve, abducens nerve is coming from what, our this ponto-pyramidal junction. Similarly the seventh cranial nerve, it is coming from ponto-olivary junction, right? The eighth, it is what, it is coming from our what, behind our olive. So what was this, this was our completely ponto-medullary junction. So now talking about the nerve that was coming from, between this pyramid and this olive, what was this, this was our two-wheel cranial nerve. So this was about this diagram. Now let's do one thing, that let's focus on this cranial part of our brainstem. That means in this region, cranial part of our brainstem. Now we're talking about cranial part of our brainstem. The thing that we'll see is, these are the things. So the same story again, this is pons, right? And these are the cerebral peduncles. Now we have already said the third cranial nerve, it is the content of what, intercerebral peduncle, and the fourth cranial nerve, what, fourth cranial nerve is what, it is coming dorsally. So now what is this, this is our interpeduncular, right, interpeduncular fossa or space. Now these are cerebral peduncle are also called crus cerebri. Why it is called crus cerebri? Because crus stands for white matter, so the cerebral peduncle are the part of white matter. Okay. Now this cerebral peduncle, why these are called cerebral peduncle, I've already said, I've already said why these are called crus cerebri. These are called crus cerebri because crus stands for white matter. And why these are called cerebral peduncle? These are called cerebral peduncle because descending track from cerebrum, right, descending track which are from cerebrum, that we can say the pyramidal track one, right? Now they will travel through this region. That's why it is called cerebral peduncle, right? Because of the presence of what, because of presence of descending track from cerebrum, right? These are called cerebral peduncle. Now, yes, I have already said above of this interpedunculair fossa we have got optic chiasma, and a bit laterally we have got optic tract also, right? Now here the content, talking about the content, this is infundibulum, these are mammillary body. Now important thing that I would like to add up right here is this, the red, right, red dotted, what are these are posterior perforating substances. These are posterior perforating substance, and these are the important content of our interpeduncular fossa, right? Now why are these okay, if there is in our posterior perforating substance, then there may be anterior perforating substance also, and that anterior perforating substance are present right here. Now what are these? Okay, these are olfactory bulb, and this olfactory bulb below it consists of olfactory tract. Now this olfactory tract is divided into medial and okay, this is the medial, and this is the medial, and this is the lateral, medial and lateral part, and between these there is the formation of anterior perforating substance. As you can see, anterior perforating substance. Okay, this was this was about the boundary of interpeduncular interpeduncular fossa, and also about anterior perforating substance and posterior perforating substance in detail. It is coming on again, right? Now as you can see, anterior perforating substance, it is perforated by branch of anterior cerebral artery and middle cerebral artery. These things will come now slowly after our after our this image, right, in this image. So now, yes, the content of interpeduncular fossa, what are the content? Infundibulum and tuber cinerum. Okay, tuber cinerum is also the content of our interpeduncular fossa. Now okay, now one is mammillary body. Now mammillary body, fornix will end in this mammillary body, that is one important thing. And third cranial nerve, it is also. And another thing is posterior perforating substance. Now posterior perforating substance now here it is written gray matter area perforated by branch of posterior cerebellar artery. Now we'll be talking about these things in this diagram, don't worry. Here it was mentioned about perforated by branch of anterior cerebral artery and middle cerebral artery, and here it is said that it is perforated by only posterior cerebellar artery. Okay, now what about, let's understand posterior perforating substance, right? The blood vessels which are present in surface, right, there may be blood vessels which are present on surface, and they also need to supply into the core side, inside, right, into the core inside. Now what will happen is that these region, the posterior perforating substance right, once they pierce parenchyma, right, some branch will pierce through this region, these posterior perforating substance, so that they can supply the core region. That's why these are important. Okay, now without delay, now let's move toward this diagram. In this diagram we will be more clear about anterior perforating substance, right, and in this region we have posterior perforating substance also, okay. Now I would like to take you toward this diagram. Don't mug up much. In this diagram, the same story again. Okay, as you can see, these are these are covering our cerebral peduncle, right? Behind these there are our cerebral peduncle, and here what is this structure? What is this? This is our interpeduncular fossa. Now talking about interpeduncular fossa's boundary, above we have optic chiasma, and on side we have optic tract, yes. And talking about the content, we have tuber cinerum, and also we have infundibulum, and here the bulging structure, what are these? These are the mammillary bodies, right, Now as we said that the third cranial nerve was present right here. Fourth cranial nerve, it was just coming right like this, right? Now this third and fourth cranial nerve, right, these were situated between two arteries. These are posterior cerebral artery, right, and superior cerebral artery. Posterior cerebellar artery and superior cerebellar artery. Cerebellum, we are talking about cerebellum. Now okay, those things. Okay, now before getting into that, we need to understand what is this. This is our basilar artery, right, basilar artery. Now this basilar artery, as it will go, it is divided into two branches. The above one, that is posterior cerebral artery, and the below one is superior cerebellar artery. The below one superior cerebellar artery, the above one posterior cerebellar artery, and between these what are present? The third and fourth cranial nerve are present between these two. So if there will be problem in these arteries, posterior cerebellar artery and this superior cerebellar artery, then there can be effect to our this third and fourth cranial nerve. That is one important thing. Okay, we talked about this thing. Now the perforating substance, okay, as you can see right here, superior cerebellar artery, it is shown right here, right? Superior cerebellar artery is this one, it is written right here, and the above one is our posterior cerebral artery. We already mentioned that between we have our third and fourth cranial nerve. That's all. Now moving further yes, moving further, if you'll see right here, right, if you will see right here in this region, okay, where in this region, if you'll see, what you will see is there is internal carotid artery. Now this internal carotid artery, it consists of what? It consists of two branches. These are anterior cerebral and middle cerebral, right? Anterior cerebral and middle cerebral. Okay, I forgot to mention this posterior cerebral artery, which is present right here, it will what? It will perforate this region? It will perforate posterior perforating substance, right? That was the important point, posterior perforating substance. Now talking about internal carotid, here two branches that we need to concentrate right here is, it consists of what? It consists of middle cerebral, internal carotid artery, it consists of what? It consists of middle cerebral artery, right? And another branch that it consists of is anterior cerebral artery, right? Anterior cerebral artery, as you can see right here, anterior cerebral artery will go up like this. Now between these middle cerebral artery and anterior cerebral artery, there is the presence of what? There is the presence of our what? Anterior perforating substance. So anterior perforating substance, it is perforated by what? Our middle cerebral artery and anterior cerebral artery, both, right? Both. That is the important thing. Okay. Now, okay, let's talk a bit about what relation of anterior perforating substance. I've already mentioned that this is the region of anterior perforating substance. It is perforated by the branches of internal carotid artery, that is middle cerebral artery and anterior cerebral artery, right? Now let's talk about what the relation of anterior perforating substance. Medially, if you'll see, medial to this structure, what is medial to this structure? Obviously optic chiasma, right? Optic chiasma. And if you'll see posteriorly, what we have? Posteriorly we have optic tract. And laterally, if we talk laterally, it is not, we are not able to show right here, but laterally there is limen insulae, right? Limen insulae is present laterally, and again lateral to that there is uncus, right? Limen insulae and uncus are present lateral to our what? These anterior perforating substance. So relation of anterior perforating substance, medially optic chiasma we know, posteriorly optic tract we know, and laterally limen insulae is present lateral, and then another thing that is more lateral is our uncus. That's all. So this was about what? This was about the ventral aspect. Now what we'll do is we'll start the dorsal aspect, right? We'll start the dorsal aspect. Now looking dorsally, what we'll do, we'll just remove this cerebellum. We'll remove this cerebellum, and then we'll look how our brainstem is. Okay, talking about the dorsal aspect of our brainstem, what we have this diagram. Now in this diagram, what we are doing, we are watching our brainstem from posterior side, from dorsal side. Now here, to have better view of our brainstem, what we are doing, we are cutting the portion of what? Our cerebellum, right? And after cutting, now what we are able to view it, right? We are able to watch the every detail of our what? Of our brainstem. Now here this above region till this, it is our what? Midbrain. Why we are saying that it is midbrain? It is midbrain because here we can see what? We can see superior colliculus, right? Two superior colliculus and two inferior colliculus. Now these as a whole, it is called what? These are called corpora quadrigemina, and these are the content of what? These are the content of our midbrain. Now there is another thing also, that is our what? Pineal gland, and this pineal gland is not the topic of discussion right now. Okay, now with it what? Now if we'll see carefully, then what we'll see is that there is what? There is one nerve, that is fourth cranial nerve, that we said it earlier, that it is the nerve that comes from dorsal side, right, below what, inferior colliculus. Yes, this is what, this is our fourth cranial. Now moving downward, what we'll see is, we'll see pons, right. Now this is the region of pons, this is the region of pons, and then what we have got medulla oblongata. Okay, in this region of pons, what we will see is our this cerebellum, it is attached with our this pons, or to brainstem, specifically talking specifically, this our cerebellum, it is connected to pons. Now it is connected to pons with the help of what, with the help of structures. Now what are these structures? These are what, these are cerebral peduncles. Now what are the cerebral peduncles? These superior cerebral peduncle, inferior cerebral peduncle, and middle cerebellar peduncle. So these are the structure, these are the structure that will help brainstem to connect with cerebellum, or precisely that will help pons to connect with cerebellum. Okay, so now if you'll see carefully, what you'll see is superior cerebellum peduncle and inferior cerebellum peduncle, these what, they are fusing with each other, right. At some point they are fusing with each other, leaving our this middle cerebellar peduncle outside. So now if you'll see, what is this, this is our rhomboid shaped structure, and this is what, the floor of our fourth ventricle. Now if you'll see in this region, this is what, this is our fourth ventricle. Now here if you'll see, here these are what, dotted line, right. The dotted line, if you'll see the dotted line, what are these dotted line? These are nothing but these are our what, these are our sulcus limitans. What are these? Sulcus limitans. We studied this sulcus limitans where? In the phase of development. At that time we said that the sulcus limitans is the structure that will limit our neural tube into what, alar plate, one alar, and another what, another basal, right, basal plate, alar plate and basal plate. This alar plate, it is lateral one, right, lateral, and it is what, it is motor in nature, and basal plate, it is what, it is alar plate, it is lateral and it is sensory in nature, and this medial plate, medial plate, it is what, it is motor in nature. So here as you will see, what is this, this is our sulcus terminals, sulcus limitans, that will limit the medial, the lateral and medial part. So here this is what, this is lateral one, lateral region. As you will see, this is what, this is a lateral region. So this is lateral, that means it is alar plate, and it is what, it is sensory in nature. And the medial one, you can see, what is this medial one? This medial one is what, it is basal plate, and it is responsible for motor function. Similarly here in this structure also, this is sulcus limitans, this is what, this is lateral is what, alar plate, sensory in nature, and this side, it is what, it is basal plate, right, medial and motor in nature. So this is what, this is about our what, the structure present right behind. Okay, now if you'll see, now after pons, what is this? This is our medulla oblongata, obviously. Now after medulla oblongata, what is the structure right here? This is spinal cord, obviously. And if you remember, in spinal cord, what we discussed, in spinal cord we discussed that there are what, there are fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus, right. These are the things that we discussed. Now these fasciculus gracilis, okay, this is what, this is, okay, let's suppose, okay, this is our fasciculus gracilis and this is our fasciculus cuneatus. Now as they go upward, there will be nucleus of these fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus. So these are what, these region, if you will see, these are bulge region. These are what, these are the bulge region of fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus. Now if you will see precisely, then okay, if you will say precisely, what are these called? These are called nucleus gracilis and nucleus cuneatus. Now these nucleus gracilis and nucleus cuneatus, right? Okay, now again there comes the role of our gracilis tubercle and cuneatus tubercle. Now what will happen is that the first order neuron, what I am saying, the first order neuron, okay, the first order neuron, the first order neuron of what, the neurons of our what, dorsal column tract, they will what, they will end at what, they will end at this region. Now what these region are also called, these are called our gracilis tubercle and our what, cuneatus tubercle. That means now the dorsal column tract that we studied previously, the first order neuron of that tract will end at gracilis tubercle and gracilis tubercle and cuneatus tubercle. That's all. So So now moving further, what we have is we have the same schematic diagram of same thing. So here again, what is this region? This region is what? This is our midbrain, this region is our pons, and this below region is our medulla oblongata. This region we have superior colliculus, we have inferior colliculus. These are as whole considered as corpora quadrigemina. And from below inferior colliculus, what we have? We have what? Our fourth below this yes, that's right, below inferior colliculus we have what? We have fourth cranial nerve, that was arising dorsally, right? Okay, now moving a bit down, what we said that there are how many peduncle? Cerebellar peduncle, superior cerebellar peduncle, and inferior cerebellar peduncle, and middle cerebellar peduncle. So this rhomboid shaped structure, rhomboid fossa, it is what? It is the floor of our fourth ventricle. In this floor of fourth ventricle, in this what? This fourth ventricle, there will be the boundaries will be superior cerebral peduncle, inferior cerebral peduncle, and we also mentioned about bulge structure right here in medulla oblongata. What are they? They were gracilis tubercle and cuneatus tubercle, right? So the boundary of our fourth ventricle, talking about the boundary of fourth ventricle, what are the boundaries of our fourth ventricle? The first one is our superior cerebral peduncle, inferior cerebral peduncle. We have what? We have these structure right here, gracilis tubercle, cuneatus tubercle also, right? So these are, and okay, we talked about these things. Middle cerebellar peduncle, it will not form the boundary of our fourth ventricle. As you can see, it is a bit outward. Now here, yes, what is this rhomboid shaped structure? And in what we said that there are what? There are sulcus limitans. These are the sulcus limitans. As you can see, this will limit what? This will limit alar plate and basal plate. The basal plate are motor in nature, alar plate are what? These are sensory in nature. So that's all. Now if you'll see carefully, right, there will be what? There you'll see, if you'll see carefully, there will be our what? There will be our two-welt triangle. Now why two-welt triangle? Why it is called two-welt triangle? If you will see, now here there is the formation of two-welt triangle. Now it is called two-welt triangle because there is the presence of hypoglossal nucleus right there, hypoglossal nucleus right there, right? Hypoglossal nucleus. Now if you will see above, you will see facial colliculus. Now what is this facial colliculus? It is nothing but it is facial nerve. That means seventh facial nerve that is surrounding what? That is surrounding sixth abducens nerve, right? It is facial nerve that is surrounding sixth what? Abducens nerve. That is our facial colliculus. We'll just know about these things right here. Okay, let's begin directly. Now okay, let's suppose what is this? This is our region of pons, right? Region of pons. As you can see, what is this? This is our sixth cranial nerve, and this here the seventh cranial nerve is winding around this sixth cranial nerve. Now this now while winding, there will be what? There will be bending right here, and this bend is called internal genu, and because of this bend there will be elevation right here, and this elevation is called our facial colliculus. That is called facial colliculus. Now why our seventh cranial nerve need to wind around our sixth cranial nerve? It could have just directly gone, it could have gone like this also, right? But why it is just rounding or winding around our sixth cranial nerve? It is winding around the sixth cranial nerve because if we will just recall the cranial nerve nuclei, then we'll find if we'll recall cranial nerve nuclei, then they're in second place, right? In second place, what we have SVE, and in second last place we have GSA. Now in this SVE, right, there is facial nuclei, right? In GSA there is nuclei for our trigeminal nuclei, let's say. Okay, why we're talking about these two things? We're talking about these two things because facial facial nerve, right? Facial nerve, the main motor nuclei for face. Okay, let's talk about main motor nuclei of face and main sensory nuclei of face. That means face, right? Face consists of what? Motor nuclei, and another our sensory nuclei. Now talking about motor nuclei, the motor nuclei of face region is what? It is mainly done by our facial nucleus, that is found in SVE region. That is the second place, if you recall the cranial nerve nuclei lecture then. And talking about the sensation of face is mainly carried by what? It is carried by trigeminal nuclei, and it is present second last, let's say at last region. So these are so far from each other. since they are so far from each other, right, we need to what, we need to we need to be quick, we need to be quick in the case of motor and sensory what communication. That means if somebody is pricking in your cheek region, then there should be response so quickly. Now since they are so far, if they will not be nearer, then what will happen, there will be no what, proper response, proper coordination. So what will happen is that for faster reflexes, what will happen, this seventh, right, this seventh facial nerve, facial nerve, it will just go nearer to what, nearer to our what, trigeminal nerve, right, trigeminal nuclei, let's say trigeminal nuclei. So what will happen now, this facial nerve, right, facial nerve, that is main what, the facial nerve is what, the main our motor nuclei, right, motor nuclei will be closer to our sensory nuclei, right, because of this winding process. Now this bringing up motor and sensory nucleus together, right, being together for faster response, is the reason why our this 7th cranial nerve is winding around our 6th cranial nerve, so that it will go closer to trigeminal nerve, and then there could be faster response. So this process is called what, neurobiotaxis. Now what is neurobiotaxis? Similarly, the same thing, the motor 7th nuclei migrate toward sensory what, it is 6th, right, sensory 6th nuclei for faster reflexes. Sorry, not 6th, sensory 5th, we are talking about trigeminal, right, trigeminal. Motor of 7th nuclei will migrate towards sensory 5th nuclei for faster response, that is neurobiotaxis, and this is the reason why our this 7th cranial nerve is winding around to be nearer to our what, 5th cranial nerve or the sensory part. Okay, so this was all about like this is all about. Okay, and similarly there is, if you will see carefully, now here you will see what, our another triangle, these are our 10 triangles, right, this is called 10 triangle. Why? Because our vagus nerve nuclei is found right here. Now if you will see more precisely, then you will find what, you will find some red margin right here. These are area prostrema. What are these area prostrema? These are nothing but the center of vomiting. Now these are what, these are the part of circumventricular organs. What are circumventricular organs? Circumventricular organ are the region in which will not find blood brain barrier. That's why these are the region where blood brain barrier is not found. Now yes, I think everything is clear in this diagram. We are all aware about each and everything right here. Now okay, now talking about nuclei that are present on the floor of 4th ventricle, that means right here, talking about the nuclei that are present on the floor of 4th ventricle, the first nuclei is what, the nuclei that is present inside our this facial colliculus. I already said that this is what, the bulging part is our what, the bulging is because of facial colliculus. That means inside which nucleus is found of this facial colliculus, inside obviously 6th nucleus is found inside our facial colliculus, right. So the one content of this our 4th ventricle, or one content of our this floor of 4th ventricle is nucleus of cranial nerve 6. Similarly, another nucleus that we have is, we have 8th cranial nerve nucleus, right, and similarly we have 10th and 12th also. Okay, we are clear about these things now. Now moving further, okay, if there will be question that will say us that there is injury in facial colliculus, if there will be question that is telling us that there is injury in facial colliculus, then what will happen? There will be damaging of which muscle, or there will be reflex loss in which muscle? Okay, we know that facial colliculus, inside facial colliculus we have what, nucleus for 6th cranial nerve, right, 6th cranial nerve. Now this 6th cranial nerve is abducens nerve, and it is responsible for lateral rectus, lateral rectus muscle, right, lateral rectus muscle. So maximum time will go for this answer, but this answer is not right, because we are saying that injury is what, injury is to the structure of facial colliculus. That means the injury is directly to facial colliculus, means it is injury, the injury is to 7th cranial nerve, right, 7th cranial nerve. Since there is injury to 7th cranial nerve, obviously what will happen, there will be the condition of facial paralysis, right? But if there would be questions such as the injury to the nuclei present within facial colliculus, then at the time we would have gone for what? We would have gone for paralysis of lateral rectus muscle. So that is the difference. That is the difference. Now moving further, what we have is, let's talk about fourth ventricle in brief. Now talking about fourth ventricle in brief, now what is this? This is our fourth ventricle. Now front you can see what is this? This is our pons, right? This is our medulla oblongata, and behind what we have got cerebellum. So talking about fourth ventricle, we talked about the content of floor of fourth ventricle already. Now talking about the boundary, we already discussed earlier that superior cerebellar peduncle, inferior cerebellar peduncle, gracile tubercle and cunate tubercle, we already discussed in this diagram, right? We already discussed right here, right here, right here. These are what? These are our boundaries. Now talking about floor, rhomboid fossa, we already discussed about the floor also. And okay, right here what we are saying is, yes, we are talking about roof, and roof, the thing that we can see here is, what is this? This is our superior medullary velum, and another, and right below what we have is, we have inferior medullary velum. Now this superior medullary velum is a misnomer, because here this structure is not present behind medulla oblongata, it is present behind what? Behind pons. So it is a misnomer. Superior medullary velum is a misnomer. That's all. And okay, and talking about inferior medullary velum, it is what? It is present just behind what? Medulla oblongata only, right? Okay, present behind medulla oblongata only. And talking about these two, right? This velum, what does this velum, what it stand for? It stands for what? It stands for our the relation with nervous system, right? Velum, it is what? These are superior medullary velum, it is the collection of what? Axons, that is the collection of white matter. And talking about inferior medullary velum, it is what? It is not related with what? Our nervous system, it is the extension of what? It is the extension of pyometer, right? Pyometer. So here it is mentioned, it is not non-nervous structure, because it is the extension of what? Pyometer. But these are superior medullary velum, it is the what? It is the nervous structure, and it is the collection of axon, that is white matter. So with it we completed fourth ventricle also, and this was all about what? This was all about our brainstem. Okay, this was all about brainstem, and I hope we are clear with the topic. Thank you and have a great time.